and welcome to the Social Power Lab podcast, brought to you by Folks Leadership Group. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Social Power Lab. I have with me Dr. Ted Vokes.
Oh yeah, that's my cue. Sorry.
That's you, yeah.
Yeah. Just poke me with a sharp stick.
Yeah.
When it's my turn to talk.
And then we also have Dr. Amir Talai as well.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
And I'm Adrian Deschamps, and yeah, this is the Social Power Lab, episode 4. So where we left off last was we were talking about the composite forms of power. And that was a really good explorative episode because we explored how the different source forms of power can be used in very fluid combinations to, become these composite forms. And one that we left off on, because it's so complex and very it's very
Nuance.
free flowing, very nuanced. Yeah, that's a word. We left off on reality shaping power, which I think we're going to dive into before we talk about our indirect composite forms, which is the goal of this episode today, is talking about these indirect composite forms. And this discussion actually came up. It was really funny. Ted and I were on Pelee Island, and we were talking about this. It was kind of funny.
We're supposed to be a day off driving
It was
around
supposed to be a
Pelee
day.
Island.
Yeah, we're
Like on a golf cart. Like
yeah,
it's
and
at something like 45 kilometers an hour, given who is driving. And
yeah. Well, it wasn't a very fast golf cart, but it was.
well, for those of us in the back, it felt quite different.
It was bumpy. It was bumpy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So we're not actually doing a tourism spot here, but to go to Pelee Island, rent a golf cart, it's legal, and have a blast and talk about social power. Sorry, Adrian, go ahead.
no, it's okay. I love how you mention it's legal. That's
It is. It's legal
but
on the island.
we were discussing, and one of my points with this is that there's certain, we're going to talk about these specific types of power today. And originally, we just kind of talked about them as just other composite forms, right? And I personally found that they were expressed at a distance, so to speak. I don't really know how to explain this. Essentially, we ended up calling them indirect composite forms of power because the form of power was expressed really indirectly, right? Like it wasn't necessarily so much the intention of the person to have this power in the relationship that they have with others, right? One of them that we're going to talk about is reputation. Your reputation is not necessarily formed through you, right? It's formed in the brains of other people that you're connected to in some way.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my point there. What I was bringing up to Ted was like, it feels like there's like direct forms and indirect forms, and I don't know. So anyways, we just kind of landed on the overarching umbrella of indirect composite forms. So we're going to dig into that today, and these ones are really cool. And it just kind of goes to show how social psychology is just working in so many different directions, right? And so many different complex ways. So with that, I think, was there anything else we wanted to mention off the bat, Ted?
Yeah. Little stuff. If we have time at the end of this episode or at the beginning of the next one, we're gonna a listener, a very loyal listener, has shared some observations and asked some penetrating questions about power and consciousness, and we've gone so far in our thinking about this, but she has prompted us to think even more deeply. And so this is what we're going to do with these episodes too. Is when we get this feedback from people, we're going to bring it up and build the framework and the theory from your observation. So we'll do that. And I just want to preamble this one by saying this may be the episode of the Overtired, because before we launched in, we all acknowledged for our various reasons we're exhausted, but really wanting to do this. So if we sound a little sleepy, we are. Um, but what I like about that, when you're not like, you know, sleeping to the point of you're about to fall asleep in your cornflakes, um, uh, yeah, maybe some of the uh, natural the constraints on our thinking may be falling down. So we may not be as crisp in our rationales as well, but we may say some unexpected things too. So yeah,
I mean,
that's
I'm always crispy.
yeah, you are
That's kind
right.
of
You
how I
know,
just like to present
we
myself, right?
crispy critter.
Like
Yeah,
a Krispy
that'd
Kreme
be
donut.
yeah,
Yeah.
which we don't seem to have too many of
Which
back in
no,
Canada anymore.
I think there was one here in like 2003.
Yeah, and
Mm,
it was they had cops out there directing traffic the first few days it was opened, and then it disappeared 6 months later. So, but
interesting.
yeah, Tim Hortons reigns supreme, I guess.
Yes, it does.
Does but
Yeah, so reality shaping power. I mean, you know, one of the things that I found so unique about reality shaping power is, to me, it was one of the most meaningful forms, right? And I remember learning it in my undergrad, and I just remember the topic of like families, right?
Mhm.
About how, you know, your family of origin, or wherever it is that you come from, the people raising you have reality shaping power over you in ways that they honestly don't even understand sometimes,
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Like, I can even just think to little things about how I make food, or how I, like, my parents used to put on peanut butter sandwiches, they would put like butter on it as well, right? Which just sounds so strange.
Not to my family though, but my
No,
family
okay.
was no, but my family was seen as being strange for that.
Yeah, and then
Right.
I
So I get what you're saying. Like, you got peanut butter. Why'd you put butter on? But
yeah,
we
and
never
then
knew
I
those things were
figured
weird.
out that my mim did the same thing for my dad, right?
Yeah.
So then that's just like, peanut butter sandwiches aside, that's that's just kind of like how reality shaping power can works, right? Is it gives you this sense of, the person that has reality shaping power over you creates that sense of, this is how this is done, right?
Yeah.
Or this is, you know,
Which
this
is
is the
a
reality.
hallmark of culture, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a culture of how you make a peanut butter sandwich in the family, or it's a culture of, how we arm our military. We don't use, tactical nuclear weapons, so we don't have them in our arsenal, or we do, and so we have them in our arsenal, right? So yeah, those are all realities. I just like to bounce between peanut butter sandwiches and, thermonuclear devices.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They have a lot in common,
they
honestly.
really do. Yeah, I'd say hardly a difference.
Another funny example, when I was in Alberta maybe a month ago. I was in Calgary, and I've never been before. And one of the facilitators that I was taking training with, he kept making these jokes about Saskatchewan, and it was so funny to me because, like, in Ontario, we don't really do that. Like, we
No,
don't really make fun of certain provinces, right? But like in Alberta, it was so funny. Everyone from Alberta was like making fun of the one person from Saskatchewan, like light teasing, right?
yeah,
Nothing actually
yeah,
serious. But it was just like, yeah, Saskatchewan, you just look straight ahead and you can see Manitoba. Like, they were like, and I guess the joke was that it's just so flat, right?
yeah.
Me having never been to Saskatchewan or Manitoba, my reality was shaped in that moment. I'm like, okay, I guess that Saskatchewan is very, very flat.
Mhm.
Something I haven't thought about, right? So now my perception of what Saskatchewan will look like when I eventually go there, from this person, who shaped my reality. His name was Scott, hilarious guy. Yeah, Scott essentially unintentionally used reality shaping power to shape my perception of Saskatchewan's, landscape, I guess, right? And there's a lot of like serious ways that reality shaping power is used, and there's a lot of like little careless, subtle ways that are so mundane and don't even matter, right? Like
Oh,
there's
sure. Yeah. I mean, I just that, again, we like to explore power on the, very grand scale, on the very micro, like you're saying, Adrian. But, you know, my dad loved animals and loved birds and whatnot, but he didn't like pigeons. And I remember being struck when we were walking in a little town and there's pigeons everywhere, and he was, they're, oh, pigeons are, and this is just not what I'm accustomed to with my father. He fed the birds, he brought them on, and and I remember pushing back on that, even as a fairly little kid in my own mind. Pigeons are just birds, like they just are. But he gave me this rationale: they're dirty, dirty birds and things like that. Of course they are. They hang around people and do what birds do wherever they're going to do it. Um, and I, I was like, pigeons just are. They just are. They do what they do. They're hardwired to do it, and it's just that we don't particularly appreciate them because they come in our proximity and we see something that they do that we find unpleasant. So, um, but just because I didn't adopt his version of reality, even though he was, telling me of all the animals that we love and hang out with, this one you shouldn't love, you know. And he wasn't dogmatic about it or anything like that. It was more about, you know, just expressing his view under the frustration of all these birds. So anyway, the trivial example of a failed reality shaping attempt, but
Mhm.
it stuck with me too. No, the reality I hold is any animal does what any animal does.
Yeah.
They're wired to do it, as are we. And but somebody else could come along with a different version of reality entirely. You know. Um,
Yeah. And it's interesting like how deep it can go. So like a little story I just remembered. It's a grade school story, so Windsorites might find this funny. I don't know, depending if you're from my neck of the woods or not. But I went to a grade school. It's not actually. You know what? Both of these grade schools aren't there anymore. But the grade school that I went to was called Saint Bernard, and then across the way there was another grade school called Gordon McGregor. Both of these buildings are still there, but they're not these schools anymore. Anyway, so the reality of St. Bernard School was, it's very rude, but we would call Gordon McGregor Gordon McGarbage. And then Gordon McGregor would call us St. Barnyard, right? So, and the reality dynamic between that was that we were calling them garbage and they were calling us farm animals, right?
hmm
Again,
hmm
and I'm talking like 8-year-old children here, right?
Right. Right. Well, and inclusion exclusion power.
Yeah, that as well.
Fitting right in there with in group out group.
And that was the reality, and like to the point outside of school, if you ran into somebody from you know Gordon McGregor or whatever, like reality was shaped. We didn't even know anything about each other, but it was
Yeah.
just like, oh, you go to St. Barnyard, right? And then we'd start like throwing sticks and rocks at each other or something stupid like that. This is a true story. Like we
Good.
literally had a it was like that scene from Stephen King's It where they had like the rock fight. I've literally had one of those like rock and stick fights on a playground before with the Gordon McGregor kids. It was 7
You're
years old, just going at it.
and you're alive today to tell us about
Live
it.
today to
Yeah.
tell us about it. Yeah, I've got a few bumps on my face, but that's okay. Um, it's still pretty. But yeah, and that was just such a reality thing. And I remember our teachers kind of talking to us about it and saying labels and this and that, and they were basically trying to explain to us without the language that we're kind of abusing reality shaping power, right? as
Yes.
as children.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how,
Brilliant.
yeah, I remember that just came to me as we started talking. Good times. Crazy.
Back in the days of rock fights.
Yeah, back in the 90s. Yeah, and Amir, something that was funny with you with reality shaping power. The first time
Mhm.
I ever gave Amir a ride somewhere in my car, this guy would not put his seatbelt on. Like he
People
just
don't
wouldn't
for
put
the
his
first few seconds, Adrian.
what?
Y-
Adrian, people are just hearing our podcast. Police is hearing. So
Yeah, yeah, and they'll be on the lookout for a mirror now.
Yeah, but it was funny, right? Because he gets in my car, and the modern day cars, they like ding and stuff when someone's not wearing their seatbelt, right?
Yeah,
And Amir gets in the car, and my car starts dinging at him, and he's basically like, "What the hell is that?" And I'm like, "Why aren't you wearing your seatbelt?" And he's like, "Why do I have to wear a seatbelt?" And then it just turns out, where I'm from, it was like the car doesn't move until your seatbelt's on. That's how my mom taught me.
oh yeah, yeah.
And then where Amir's from, it was just like, seatbelt standards weren't that, you know,
Different
the
in
car
the
still moved,
yeah.
right? So, but
Do you want to comment on this story, Amir, since it's about you and you're right here?
yeah, so I was joking.
yeah,
Ah, well, now
Obviously.
we finally know.
Yeah.
He wears his seatbelt whenever I drive, so he's either learned his lesson or he's not trying to poke me like he was Adrian.
oh man,
Yeah.
yeah. Any I don't know, any reality shaping stories, Amir, that you got?
As I'm looking at the definition, I think reality shaping power is essentially what we, if you explore the literature on influence, like they talk about exactly this kind of power. Like they say that two main methods of influence is reasoning through logical reasoning, and the other avenue is emotional like appeal. So exactly what we are having here. Or again, constant repetition, illustrative behavior, such as setting an example. These are all the techniques and tactics found in the influence literature. But again, this is only one form of power we have here.
Yeah.
And that whole literature on influence, and basically the idea is that these are the things you can do to make people do things for you, which they call influence. That's only reality shaping power, one of all the forms of power we have here. And so that's interesting that only this form is a whole literature on influence. And also, I want to say that people might be sensitive to different forms of reality shaping power. Like, for example, some people may be more sensitive to compelling reasoning or like logical arguments. Some people may be more sensitive or receptive to like more emotional appeals. And situational conditions could also affect that tendency. So, for example, if we are cognitively fatigued, probably we are more likely to be influenced by emotional reasoning, for example. So it's not that all of these methods or like techniques or tactics work on everyone the same way. It depends on the person and also the situation. But again, it's such an important form of power that, as I said, there is a whole literature called influence, and they just talk about this form of power. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, so helpful, I think, for everybody because at one point we would probably talk about power versus influence. Some when we train, that comes up, and we haven't found that the term influence is very helpful. But this is how reality, what we're calling reality shaping power, has been operationalized in the literature. And like you're saying, Amir, they're looking at one of what we've identified as 12
Mhm.
forms. And and also I'll bring in sales and marketing is reality shaping power, right? And there's
Yeah,
huge literatures that come out of sales and marketing, and a lot of psychology there, which isn't always led by psychologists, but often is too. So yeah, those really fall into this, I think.
yeah, for sure. And sales and marketing, that's it's such a huge one, right? Because like even just the most bizarre products, right? It's almost like you're not selling the product. It's like you're
Yeah,
selling the reality that you're
an image.
creating,
Yeah,
right? Like you're selling the image. There's so many silly products that I've even bought because it was just like, this is hilarious. I need to buy this, right? Or like something for like funny gifts, right? For like, Secret Santas and Christmas and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just marketing is one way as well, and I mean, social media. I think we mentioned this last episode, but like the idea of a social influencer as a career,
Yeah,
right? Like
it's a
who
reality
would have
shaping.
thought that
There's
would have been a career that you can go into that's very profitable, right?
hmm
And that's literally what the career is built on, is, this social influencer has reality shaping power and reputation oriented power, which we're going to get into,
yeah, yeah.
over a general audience. And then the marketing agency or whatever company is hiring them to use that power to sell
hmm
their product. Like it's
And
absolutely
in
wrong.
hiring them, they're using resource power, money,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So the influencer works for them because they're getting paid, and which is a form of power, and nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it as long as it's legal. But and it is in most of these transactions. But yeah, that's that is a nice way to be, well, fleshing out reality shaping power
Hmm.
from last episode. And the other piece that we made last time, the point that we made last time was this is really what leaders are using all 12 forms of power, but this is what everybody orients towards a leader to do when situations are uncertain. So, if everything's humming along in the office and it's a Tuesday and everybody knows their Tuesday routine, the person who is the designated the leader, the one with the legitimate power, it may be in their office, and then something happens mid-afternoon on Tuesday that no one's ever seen before, and it's like, well, we better go get the boss. And what are we getting the boss for? What's happening? What's it mean to us? What are we going to do about it? Those
Hmm.
are three leadership questions, the sense-making questions. And what's happening is just descriptive. What does it mean to us is putting, and this is where the alarm and the reward center will be activated. And informing what it means to us. Oh, this is a threat. This is not good. Oh, this is fantastic. This is an opportunity. Let's seize it. Or no big deal. You know, photocopier broke down, but we don't need any copies until next Tuesday. So you know, somebody call a technician, and then everybody moves on with their day. It doesn't mean a great deal to us. We took some action to correct it. Um, Back to Adrian, your point, we tell a lot of boring leadership stories because that's where leadership actually happens on day to day. We have some exciting ones too, but so what's happening? What does it mean to us, and what you do about it is shaping reality. It's forming reality, and it's shaping reality. And I remember a number of situations early in my career when I was in a leadership role, and um, uh, one of my troops would come to me looking for answers on something, and I'd be like, "Oh gosh, the spotlight's on me. I'm the officer, very junior. I'm supposed to be able to answer this." And your heart jumps up into your throat, and you're thinking, "Am I going to interpret this right? Am I going to, give him or her the right directive or the right course of action to take?" That sort of thing. And you're just wondering. They're coming to me. My brain's got to answer those questions. Of course, it wasn't spelled out for me at that time. We figured this out. Well, by the time my PhD came around, we figured out those three questions. I could have used that sooner, but you just people are looking at you to shape reality. And what if you shape the wrong one? It's really scary. It's just one of the many ways that leadership is a really tough thing for brains to do.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. And even it's so crazy. Like when you become a leader, right? Sometimes, and this happened for me personally. When I stepped into a role of leadership, and I had a very small team of like, you know, a few people.
hmm, doesn't
It was like I almost didn't have my reality catch up with myself, right? Like the power I held and the ability to shape the reality of, you know, my team, I didn't really feel like I had it, right?
Oh,
It
such a
was
good point. We'll be talking
yeah,
lots about that. Probably a whole episode on the feeling of power. But go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
it was just so interesting, right? And to Ted's point, like the three fundamental leadership questions, when my team would look to me and be like, "What's happening? What does it mean to us? What are we going to do about it?" I almost was like, you know, it. I almost felt like I was like an imposter, right? I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
supposed to answer
exactly.
these questions right now, right?
Yeah.
And it was very interesting, and that was when we talk about ego syntonic and ego dystonic forms of power, right? Reality shaping power, especially in the context of being a leader, was so in that way it was there was legitimate power attached and expert power attached as well.
Yeah.
It was very very dystonic to me, right? Like I did not feel. It took me a while to get comfortable with it and to kind of have that confidence of like, no, these people are looking to me for answers and to lead them, in our solution, right? And now it's okay. Like now I'm,
Yeah. You stepped it comfortably into your power.
yeah,
But you
it,
were put into this and became suddenly aware of the power that you have been given because power is in the relationship, not in the person.
yeah,
Um, there's capabilities within the person that might invite people to give them reality shaping power or expert power because, well, we see you as an expert, see you as making good judgments or assessing reality well. So we put you into that role. But by being put into it, we don't necessarily, ipso facto feel like we can do it. Oh my gosh, what if I say, I interpret the situation wrong and, we, do the wrong thing in this set of circumstances.
hmm
Um, most decisions can be undone, but there are some that can't, and that's very, very daunting for leaders, of course. Um,
yeah. And it's so funny. I actually, Ted, I told a story about you the other day to a student intern of mine,
uh,
and it was funny because I was telling her, she's starting to really thrive at teaching groups and stuff, and you know, she had a lot of like public speaking fear at first, and she's like, wow, it's amazing how like 2 hours can go by and it doesn't feel like that long. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, how I learned it. And this was Ted's reality shaping power attempt on me that was hilarious in hindsight. Is we'd be in front of hundreds of people, and he'd have a microphone, and to shape my reality of being a capable public speaker, he would just kind of say something like, yeah, Adrian's going to take us through this part of the brain, and then just hand me the mic and kind of walk away. Not like walk away completely, but just like, step aside, right? And
I'm
that
gonna
was,
go get a coffee.
yeah, like it was, and that was that, yeah, it shaped reality for me of like, I had to make some lemonade in that moment, right? So it's, and turns out, I had the lemons, right? I
And,
didn't think I did or know I did, but that was Ted's reality shaping power that, you know, it was kind of like, okay, here, try this, right?
well, and I never would have done that if I didn't absolutely know you knew all of what I was hoping you would share.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and other people wouldn't have reputation-oriented power with respect to Adrian at that point because they wouldn't know who he was. He would be sitting in that room full of a lot of people. Um, but I know his reputation. I know his capabilities, and so it's over to you, my friend. You take us through this.
And it's cool though because I always reflect on that, and it's like, the reality is that yeah, I was more capable in that moment than I thought, right? Yeah, there's all
And
kinds
it's
of
stepping into your power because I remember you were like surprised at yourself. Oh,
yeah.
look, I can do this, right? And which goes back to core needs that
Mhm.
Amir, you want to chime in on core needs sideline there just for a sec? Like,
Yeah.
what did that do for in that moment with Adrian?
So did we talk about coordinates here before?
Well, I
Brief.
think we briefly, and they will be a sub theme throughout. The other piece we've got to come back to, Adrian, is we've got to define egosyntonic and egosystonic. We use those terms all the time, and I don't know that we've done an adequate job of explaining those things.
Yeah, we could do
So,
to it.
um, so I'll just do ego dystonic and egosyntonic, and then Amir, you can do a real quick. We'll do like
Mhm.
an episode on core needs and power for sure.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so egosyntonic and ego dystonic are actually Freudian terms, and not a lot of Freud is taken literally today in most circles. There are dyed-in-the-wool Freudians for sure, but they're great terms because they tap into what fits with my identity and what doesn't. That's the idea is I could use a particular form of power, but if it's ego dystonic, it's like it's uncomfortable to me for using because I don't want to see myself in that light. Then I may reluctantly use that form of power. And but if I'm comfortable having power and exercising it, that would be ego syntonic. It's consistent with how I see myself as a human being in this particular role and place and time in this organization of self. We're going to talk about organizations of self in future episodes as well. So, um, you know, if somebody is promoted to supervisor, but they're uncomfortable telling people what to do, even if people are coming to them and saying, "What do we do?" That person is in an ego dystonic state. They're uncomfortable to exercise that power for whatever reason. There could be a whole range of reasons that they are. Now they may get more and more comfortable with it, and so something that was ego dystonic to begin with is we form our identity anew because identity is always in flux. It's different than personality. Personality is much more stable and much more fixed, but our identity is fluid and is very much a product of our socialization and our experiences and the things that we choose to go into. Um, so the first time you have a formal leadership position, it's probably going to feel a little bit awkward, maybe a lot awkward, and you'll if you want to continue to do it, you will become comfortable exercising the forms of power that that supervisor role ascribes to you through legitimate power, and you probably got it because you have some expert power. And I've seen people who know what to do, but they're uncomfortable telling people what to do. It's like you've got the expertise. They're coming to you to look for it. Yeah, but I don't want to impose. They're coming to you looking for it. They're saying, "What's happening? What's it mean to us? What do we do about it?" And um, that gets into the dazzling traits because people with the dazzling traits can have difficulty, real difficulty, stepping into their power, taking power that maybe other people even want them to take. Um, or standing in their own ground against other power attempts that could harm them. That'll be an episode. Gosh, we got a lot of episodes to come. But
He's
so
planning
Amir,
out the whole series.
oh, we already have, but it's more fluid than that. Um, Amir, you give us the core needs quickly. That's
Yeah.
ego syntonic and ego dystonic. It really relates to
And
identity.
actually, this ego syntonic and dystonic is related to one of the core needs, and that's
Yes.
autonomy. When we feel when an activity or like what we do is done autonomously, that essentially means that it's ego syntonic. And of course, if it's non-autonomous, it's ego dystonic. But this is based on self-determination theory, and self-determination theory or SDT is a need theory. There have been many theories trying to identify the most basic core psychological needs of human beings, and probably the most widely studied and validated theory is SDT, and this has been validated across cultures. And so, based on several studies, they found that all human beings around the world have three main psychological needs. One is autonomy, and then relatedness, and then the need for competence. And the reason it's called self determination theory is that they were the ones who added autonomy. And the idea that when we do things autonomously, it is self determined. if we have determined that this is what I want to do, then that satisfies our need for autonomy. And again, so they they mentioned that if these three needs are satisfied in any domain, we will be happier, more productive, and all that. In the workplace, like in family, in relationships, in everything. And yeah, so these are our core needs.
Self-determination theory. And
Yeah.
we always abbreviate it after we find it SDT. And I was giving a quick a sidebar in a lecture at the university on self-determination theory (SDT), and I had a student or two come up and they were confused because they were confused with STD. And so not to be confused with with STD, it's SDT. And so I was careful to enunciate after that. I think I was the D and T sound was messing them
Yeah.
up. So I had to do a little backtracking on that one.
Man, this
So
is why I feel like everyone in the world needs to carry around like a glossary of acronyms. I am so bad with acronyms. Like, oh my god, that oh man. But yeah, the core needs too. It was cool when Amir first taught me about them cuz then I started linking it to like primary drivers of behavior, which again, that might be up for debate, but
yeah, it's
it's
no,
just
absolutely.
interesting, right? Like I personally, like if I look at my behavior at different times and places, I can see like a need for competence driving certain things, or I can see a need for autonomy driving certain things,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, the core needs, it's really interesting, and how they relate to power. I mean, like Ted said, we're gonna have a whole piece on that, because it's so essential. But yeah, it's
And
it's amazing how psychology intersects like this.
well, this is it. It can all fit together. Psychologists don't often do a good job of fitting it all together, but that's part of our mission too. We've got a grand unification theory of all of these concepts. Um, but to this point, Adrian, it's not in the literature about uh, the the three core needs. They don't link it to power because they don't have a model of power, so they don't do that. But we instantly do. How do you meet those core needs throughout the span of your life? Because you always have to renegotiate them going forward. You do it through the 12 forms of power. And if you have a needs frustration, a needs injury, it's because you didn't have the power, or others had more power to frustrate your efforts to meet those one or more of those core needs, right?
Mhm.
Um, and all of us at one point learned to tie our shoes, and we all felt elated about that. And like I can tie my shoes. I don't need the other kids to tie my shoes for me when we go for recess. Um, and then we could tie somebody else's shoes. Well, what's this relate to? That's two. That's competence. I now know how to do this, and now I'm not reliant on somebody else, and that is my autonomy need. And then look, by tying other kids' shoes for them, I'm in relation to them, and that gives me expert power. So some of my relation needs, not fully, but partly would be impacted as well. All of that through acquiring expert power on something so trivial, except it's not, of tying your shoelaces. And then of course Velcro comes along and just throws that right out the window. But another rite of passage for childhood taken away. I guess they still tie shoes, but um, yeah. So yeah, it all fits together, right?
Mhm. Random question: does anybody hear my neighbor snowblowing?
No,
Okay, thank
no.
God.
Yeah, yeah. We won't have to re-record this whole episode
Yeah,
because
I
we've got
was.
some noise canceling.
I guess it must be really coming down out there because if the snowblower's out, that's not a good sign because I just have a shovel. But yeah, it's yeah, psychology intersecting. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love it, right? Like why I went into it is just, the everyday questions, right? That can have multiple answers and multiple things interacting with each other, multiple theories to explain it.
Yeah, yeah.
different viewpoints to look at it. Yeah. I think we better start talking about
I
these
think we better.
direct
Well,
opposite forms.
we better. Yeah. Otherwise, we bounce in the next episode. So there's reality shaping power. Between the two episodes, I think we've done a really good job on explaining it. And again, just to cap it off, as Amir was saying, you can do it through your words, through logical arguments. You can do it through emotional appeals, through anecdotes. Most brains are really wired for anecdotal information to shape their reality, more so than pie charts and graphs, unless you've really learned to put a lot of faith. And there's another one though. I could lay out all the charts and graphs in the world, but if you're anti-science, I'm not going to shape your reality because
Right.
I'm bringing data to the table that you're automatically mistrustful of, or even going to discard out of hand. As would somebody who is trying to convince me of the truth of their particular, faith tradition. It really doesn't. If I'm an atheist, and I'm really firm in my belief, you can present all the data you want, and but my scripture says this. Why don't you believe what I believe? Because I don't believe your scripture came from anything other than people sitting around in a dark room with candles writing on papyrus. So I'm disregarding or disrespecting even, your reality. So that's where reality comes into conflict. We all are forging our versions of reality. Our brains are asking ourselves for ourselves, what's happening? What's it mean to me? And what am I going to do about it? And then you get to the group context and it becomes, from I to we or us. And so the brains do this naturally anyway, but they also really rely on other brains to affirm or disconfirm our realities. And then you can get into reality contests. Marxism is the answer. It's the way that society should be organized. No, liberal democratic system is the answer. No, a totalitarian regime is. All of these arguments are they're ideological in many in at that level, but they're still trying to shape reality to lead people to particular courses of action. We structure our society differently based on the versions of reality that the, the power holders most ascribe to.
Hmm.
Right. So just my capping off reality shaping power.
No, that's excellent. Yeah. The scale of it too is especially important to touch on. So I'm glad
Well,
that.
reality in the schoolyard, reality in the building and collapse of nation states. It's
Mhm.
same forms of power at all points in between. Um, so, Mir, do you want to cap off that discussion?
Uh, I'm just remembering that children have reality shaping power as well. If you just like look at them when they play, like there's always like one kid that starts doing something or playing in a certain way, and others follow that one kid,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they're not aware that they are shaping the reality of the group. But it's very interesting that even from a very young age we see that in people, and it's really a package. It's not just the reason, very compelling reasoning, or just like emotional appeals. Like we all have a package of reality shaping power. So yeah.
Through our example, that was I forgot that point, but you're right. Through our example, just our behavior, we're shaping reality. You
Yeah.
know, if there's a loud noise and all the other kids around me don't react, I may just go back to playing in the sandbox. But if they look, alarmed and upset and whatnot, then I'm going to probably be alarmed and upset just by observing their behavior. And there's countless examples on the adult level of that as well. Um, so there's very few of the leadership tropes. I despise so much. There's going to be an episode on that one too. Boy, we're promising a lot of episodes, but we got it all. There's so many tropes about leadership that just drive me to distraction. But truly, one of the tropes that is true because it's grounded in good psychology is lead by example. Um, And it goes back to childhood. Kids will listen to your words, but they're more likely to behave on the basis of what they see you doing. And it's good to have both in sync. And of course, when we hear it in organizations frequently, well, they don't walk the talk. They say this, but they don't do this. So we watch what they do over what they say. That carries more weight for us. So their example, you know, hey, in this organization we solve problems collaboratively. We if you've got a question or a problem, you raise it and we talk it through. But if that's not people's experience when they raise a question or a problem with a boss and they get browbeaten and dismissed, then they're not going to buy into. We sit down in the room and talk it through until we have a solution and go out, you know, uh, with a consensus. So to your point, Amir, I killed the point. There you go.
It's hilarious. Yeah, so I guess, Ted, run us through kind of the inception of the indirect composite forms. And I guess, the indirect composite or, title aside, what are the forms that you first noticed?
Yeah,
Because
it,
it kind of evolved differently, right? Like it's not like we came up
it
with the
did.
of indirect composite forms. It's like we kind of started to notice, or well, conceptualize, you know, other aspects of power that, and we kind of came up with the indirect umbrella afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah. That's well put. These are some of the most nuanced forms and yet incredibly ubiquitous. And they are the forms of power that we actually are very, very likely to apply to ourselves on behalf of others. Now, how weird is that? But um, because these are the sort of the highest order forms of power and in mostly indirectly applied. What the heck does that mean? We'll flush that out. Um, but and these are the newest in the model to been conceptualized this way. So the two forms um, are norm-oriented power and reputation-oriented power. And but norm-oriented power breaks down into sort of three sub forms. They all operate on the basis of social conformity or an appeal to social conformity, which can always be rejected, right? There's a powerful dynamic in our brains to want to conform, but there's also countervailing presses in our brains that say, but I'm not going to conform or I don't want to conform. And there's some autonomy, that core need leaking back in there when it's like, well, I know what the norm is, but I don't want to comply with it. Um, so yeah, we'll start with the norm oriented and break it down to those three forms that we've identified thus far. Um, I hear a background chatter, Adrian. I don't know if any of
It
us
it
have
might be
some.
the snowblower. Honestly, I don't know.
Oh, it almost sounds like a interfering radio station, but we're not on radio, so I know it's not that. No, I don't hear it. Okay, I just don't want it to be there and frustrating to other people. Uh, we could talk through it, but it seems to be gone. So um, there's back to norm-oriented power. Um, this one is all about, well, conformity. That's what we call it, conformity oriented. And the three forms in it are trend, norm, and identity. And did I say conformity oriented power at the outset, or did I start in with norm oriented? I may have done that. I may have.
You
I
said
was talking.
norm, but
Yeah.
we
Okay.
again we've played with that title a lot.
Yeah, no, I think we can land. Conformity oriented and its trend, norm, and identity are the subsets. Okay, so all of them have in common the fact that there's a push to conformity, but they're on the basis of a trend or a social norm or a stereotypical identity. is what we're talking about here. And so it's very much well. Let's start with trends, and you could also we played with the term fad, but trend is a little broader. Fads would be things that come and go. Everybody's doing it for a while, and then they're not, and there's no shortage of trends on social media and whatnot. But there were trends long before that, fashion trends. Um, uh, oh my gosh, leadership trends. The whole field of leadership is just a refuse of trends that have come and gone. And every time a new book comes out with something that's engaging, shaping people's reality about it. Many people will jump on that leadership bandwagon for a while, and then it'll peter out and go away again. Um, Edwards Deming is famous for saying back in I think the 1960s, the most trend or fashion conscious a person in North America is not your average teenage boy or girl. It's the modern business executive. Flavor of the week. What's the latest hottest management book or leadership book? And you know, and it's a huge industry, the leadership industry, enormous industry. So, so trends are these things that now it could be that a trend actually becomes a norm down the road. If it catches on and it stays, then it becomes a norm. I remember a trend early in my career where people are all talking about, identifying best practices through, the evidence. And some people are saying, we got to make decisions on the basis of the evidence, and we've got to come up with best practices in our field and things like that. And at one time, that really was everybody sort of did their own thing, and they had their own implicit idea of what are best practices, but it became a a language around that idea, and and then it became a norm, but it could also have died out. Authentic leadership is a great example of a trend because there was a lot of pushback on that concept, and it sounds great on first blush. Be your authentic self as a leader, and what came out of that was some pushback. Some theorists saying, yeah, well, what if your authentic self is an asshole? Like this. There's some problems in your thinking here, and authentic leadership was not based on any good science anyway, and it was definitely a trend. And now there's still ripples of it and that sort of thing, but nobody that really thinks about leadership is taking authentic leadership as a serious kind of construct anymore. Um, but there'll be some diehards out there for sure. That's cool. I hope your authentic self is one that's exercising power responsibly and ethically. Then that's great. But so, Amir, Adrian, you want to add on trend, conformity-oriented power?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's interesting because Amir could probably have a stronger point here, but it's ever changing the trends, right?
Oh, absolutely. Tide Pod challenge on the internet.
Yeah,
Thank gosh that's gone, right?
and the trends can also be generational, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
different social groups as well. Dare I say it? I keep hearing this thing 6-7 apparently that like
Yep.
kids
That's
are doing right now, right?
yeah. Means
And
anything and nothing, but it's cool. And
yeah,
is
I
which
you know
is to say it means I'm in the in group. And sorry, I'm pulling all the forms of power around just this phrase 6-7, right?
yeah.
Because it's I want to be seen as in group, and referent power is cool. I do a whole lecture on cool, and cool exists in every culture all over the history. It's not always called cool, but it's a form of referent power as well, right? The cool kids versus the not, the cool executives versus those who aren't. Anyway, go ahead, Adrian. Sorry.
No, no. And yeah, it's just funny because no matter how we talk about it, we're going to come off super old to anybody who understands the 6-7 thing. But I've also heard like three different interpretations of it too. But you know, there's yeah, like the 6-7 trend, or the Tide Pod trend, or what was another one, the Cinnamon Challenge, or you know, like there's just so
The
many.
Ghost Pepper
The
Challenge.
Ghost Pepper
Yeah.
Challenge. Yeah, so
And
it's
fashion trends. It's
that
just that
yeah.
none of us are particularly fashionable. Well, Amir is. Amir is.
Yeah,
He's.
Amir's the
I
most
mean,
fashionable guy I know.
he's. You know, usually on the cover of GQ.
Like
Did you hear that? Did you hear that in the background? He just sizzled in the background.
oh
I
he,
heard that.
I mean,
I.
every step he takes sizzles. You ever see the ground after he walks on it?
Oh yeah, it's gold.
Oh my
It's
god.
gold. Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
So
sorry,
what
Amir.
kind of power are you guys now playing on me? Is it reference power or like are you trying to
You know what?
I don't
Okay, I'm going to do it. It's gentle teasing. And gentle teasing is a group cohesion thing. We gently tease each other all the time. And you know, anybody who's listening to us has probably picked up on that. And it is a part of affirming referent power. You know, I like you, I tease you gently. I had an amazing mentor early in my career, and she would, an incredible leader of a mental health center, the executive director, and um, this was when I was interning, and she would tease us at they actually let me into the senior management team, not as a senior manager, but they were so kind to me, and we would love it when she would come in and have comments about each one of us that were you know very funny, but totally meant with gentleness, as opposed to malicious teasing, where you know many a true word is spoken in jest, which is this Shakespearean acknowledgement that we can be saying, I'm only joking, but we're really firing a barb at somebody, and we feel that. So, which is negative referent power building or forming at that point. You know, I'm telling you how I feel about you through a passive aggressive means, and then gentle teasing is, you know, you're in group, and there's some great research that's been done on the power of gentle teasing. That we'll probably come back to at some point because we know this stuff too. I want to turn this over to Amir. I was going to turn it over to Amir, and then we just turned on poor Amir
No.
and gently teased him. So Amir, fight back.
I'm so teasable.
Bring it, man, bring it.
Uh yeah, so trend and also norm, I think, is the idea that oh everyone is doing it, you should too. And now when we say that to people, people will like follow whatever we say or whatever they see for two main reasons, I think. One is that they really believe that that action or those decisions or those behaviors are right, are the correct ways of like I don't know behaving, or they don't believe in those actions, but in order not to lose their relationship with others, they follow the norm or trend. And so we have the famous Ash experiment that in an experiment they showed a line and then three other lines, and those three lines were of different lengths. But the basically uh, other people in the experiment who were like with the
Confederates.
experimenter, yeah,
Yeah.
they kind of wrongly said that okay, this line is equal to that line, but it was obviously not. And the subjects, most of the time, actually changed their initial opinion and said, "Oh yeah, that line is like the similar length of that other," which was obviously wrong. And it's very shocking that people would, to that extent, change their view, change their opinion, just to conform. So that's a famous experiment, experiment.
Series of
But we,
experiments. Yeah, there are many.
yeah,
Yeah. The
and yeah, so
No, go ahead.
yeah, so I just wanted to point out that it's not that people think or believe necessarily those behaviors are right. Sometimes they know it's not, but again, pointing to our need for relatedness in order to not dissatisfy our need for relatedness, not to lose a source of satisfying our relatedness, we just conform to just go with the group. And
and
that's how it works.
preserve our referent power. Because if I say no, you may be inclined to distance me from the group or even throw me out of the group, you know. Um, on Wednesdays, we wear pink, right? It was Wednesdays or Tuesdays. I'm gonna
It's Wednesdays.
somebody's gonna. It's Wednesdays. Okay,
Oh yeah.
I got it right the first time. And so if you don't wear pink, and for those of you who don't know, that's Mean Girls reference. Um, and Yeah, we actually use Mean Girls in training a great deal. Um, Another episode, the Mean Girls episode. This is the sleep deprived episode, and that'll be the Mean Girls episode. We'll all wear pink. And in fact, because I can see him, Adrian is wearing pink today, and it's very
That's true.
fetching. It's very fetching. It's very pink hoodie.
I'm
Um,
told it brings out my eyes.
yeah, your pink eyes, right? He's
Yeah.
actually looks very much like a albino rabbit. But where is this coming from? This is very much the sleep divided episode. Yeah, so exactly. And this spills us into norm oriented as a subset of conformity. Again, conformity oriented because all three of these subsets are an appeal to conformity, right? To fit in the sense of the trend, to in norms comply with social dictates. So that may be our segue into norm oriented power. And on this one, what we're looking at is essentially this collective understanding of normative behavior within our group. And this could be the family, it could be a couple, could be, who are forming a norm amongst themselves as they're dating. And they're trying out different ways, but eventually, once they've been together long enough, they're going to have these norms that they don't even think about. This is the formation of culture, and and culture is absolutely essential to all of social life. Doesn't mean everybody is always complying with the cultural dictates all of the time or anything like that. But so set of norms. Like in our culture, we line up. In England, they call it queuing. And so the phrase "Hey, buddy, the line starts back there." That is a direct uh, statement about a social norm, but it's applied sort of indirectly. So I say that to, Adrian, because and we have an expression, butt into line. He's taken a shopping cart and, you know, tried to interject himself into a place in the line that isn't the end of the line. And so he's now you can't call the police on Adrian for failing to queue up or line up in the right place. So the phrase "Hey, buddy, the line starts back there" is essentially an appeal to conform to the norms, but there's nothing I can do. It's not legitimate power, as in codified in law. I can't call the police and say, "Yeah, we've got a line butter here, to take them away." What we can do is we can socially shame you. People could look and scowl, and Adrian could be, well, the line starts wherever I am, and that would be a defiance of the norm. And people are the worst that can be happen is that they can be scowled at and judged harshly. But somebody might choose to, well, if you saw Adrian, you would not choose to take him out back. You would think he would take me out back, and there wouldn't be much left of me at the end if I did that. But
Especially when I'm wearing pink.
well, yeah, 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 with your mixed martial arts garb and the Pink Avenger, and it could lead to violence when somebody violates a social norm. I heard recently of an instance of somebody's dog maybe not relieving themselves on somebody's front yard, and the owner of that yard coming out and almost going to blows over, pick up your dog's excrement, and the person saying he did not do this, right? So they've got reality shaping power going back and forth. Your dog did this, no, your dog didn't. It's so trivial, but the reason that it escalated to where actually the police had to be called was because it's about power. You know, this is my resource, this property. You've done something to diminish my resource power here with your dog, and I expect you to make that right. Um, I didn't do that. That never happened. That was there before. It is clearly. I don't know how I got down to this example, but we have these trivial events apparently that can lead to, well, needing to call the police, um, you know, um, over the issue. And as the story was told to me, the police really put it back on the homeowner of you know creating some kind of issue that was just silly. I won't go into all the details that I recount about it. But hey, buddy, the line starts back there. Hey, buddy, your dog just did this on my lawn. Don't do that. And so, and there's a norm about that. You are allowed to take your dog in the neighborhood for walks, but you're expected to bring, you know, the appropriate plastic bags to clean up after your dog. And that wasn't always a norm. It was like, no, you just walk your dog and they do what they're going to do wherever. So norms do change, but we are held to account for them. Kids have norms, and they're cross generational. I don't know. This would be another great study to do. I saw it first. Okay, well, what about seeing it first makes it yours, right? But it's a norm, right? Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Wasim saw it first. It's his, right? That's our code, you know. Um, or um, it's rude to take the last cookie on the plate. So that poor old cookie, the orphan cookie that just sits there if everybody's complying with the norm. No, no, you have it. No, 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 no. I couldn't possibly. No, and everybody wants a cookie, right? But oh no, no, it's gonna be the orphan cookie. Um, and
Yeah. Or
um,
the person, who everyone's waiting to see who goes and gets food first at an event.
oh yes, yeah,
And then you
yeah,
always have the host of the event going, "Come on, come eat. What are you doing?" Right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
but everyone's just like, in that considerate, social norm.
yeah. Don't be a tattletaler, right?
Oh, that was huge when I was younger.
Oh, it's a big part of this culture. And you hear it. I'm the victim here. I deserve support of HR. So I'm claiming victim status, and if I frame myself successfully that way, HR has to be, supporting me. So all of these kinds of things. You can't wear that to the funeral. That's disrespectful. Well, you have to know what the culture is. In this culture, it's more a case of wearing dark clothing or black. In other cultures, it's white. And other
Yeah.
cultures, probably other colors of game that I'm not familiar with. So all of these things are not codified in law, which would make them legitimate power,
Hmm.
but they are, uh, very much nonetheless, we impose them upon ourselves. Let's go back to the line thing, right? How often do we, have our shopping cart and it's ambiguous where the lines are, and is the line here? Because we're terrified that somebody was going to have to say to us, "Hey, buddy, the line starts back there," right?
Hmm.
And if we get it wrong and we want to be complying, then we apologize profusely. Oh, I am so sorry. I thought it was here. And we'll make a big deal, a big performative deal of taking our cart and going to the real back of the line, right? And apologizing as we go. Um, so this is why we say it's indirect. It's not, you know, go line up there because I said so, right? And I said so because I have bigger fists or more strength using my resource forms of power. It's a reference to a norm to get us to comply, or a reference to a trend to get us to comply. And we can reject any power attempt. Not everybody conforms all the time. And Amir, to your point about the Ash experiments, there were conditions under which the participants, the way it went was a whole line of people, and each person had to say which line was the longest, or were these two lines the same or not, and there were clear distinctions. It wasn't even up for you know a measurable debate, and I say that intentionally. If you actually measured the lines with a ruler, you would see a difference, and so there'd be say there was 10 in the row, and the experimental subject, which was what they called them back then, now it's participant, would be the last person to say. So the nine, who would be graduate students who were in on the experiment, would say the wrong uh, line, and then it was more often than not that the 10th person would comply with what had been said. But if even one of the people in that lineup of nine said the actual um, uh, the truth of the length of the lines, then the final person was much more likely to go with the actual which line is longer answer. So because they had one other person suggesting a different interpretation of reality, they felt comfortable doing that. But more often than not, as you're saying, Amir, if that wasn't interjected in that condition of that experiment, they would be more inclined to comply with the majority opinion, if you will, right? So that's and the thing about this one too is really cool. And I'll bring this back because it applies both to trend and norm power. So we've got normative behavior, that's everything we know, and then we can have hyponormative behavior that we would consider antisocial behavior, a deviance, and that would be the very person who says the line search wherever I am. That would be considered hyponormative behavior, below behavioral expectations of the collective. Um, but we can also have hypernormative behavior, which would be behavior that is above and beyond what's normatively expected. So if I go into, order my coffee up here at Tim Hortons, our coffee and donut place, um, and I order my coffee, and I get my donut, my coffee, and then I pay the person, and I have a polite exchange of thank you very much, and we go about our business. No norms have been violated. I paid for it, which would, if I didn't, that would be a violation of legitimate power, because by law I have to pay for what I receive at a restaurant. Um, and nobody bats an eyelash. That was a normative exchange, and you don't even really register it because it doesn't stand out. The person was not disagreeable at the counter. The person wasn't. Now that would be the hyponormative. Somebody who's demanding a coffee and complaining and making a big deal about it. Probably high conflict. We'll have another episode on that. But the hypernormative is I go up, get my coffee and donut, and it's $5 and change, and I pull out a 20 and I give it to the person. I said, pay, use up the rest of this for the people behind me, and then I walk out, and so it's pay it forward. That would be hyper normative behavior. It would be going above and beyond. So we've got effectively the sinners on the hyponormative end of it. They're not complying with social expectations. We've got the majority most of the time in the center being engaging with that normative behavior. And then we've got the saints among us, those who go above and beyond, who pay it forward. And it's still deviant behavior, but it's pro-social deviance. And it can start to bump norms in a different direction. So up here in Canada, it's not terribly uncommon to come up to the drive-through and somebody at Tim Hortons to say, your coffee's free today. What? What? Yeah, the person two cars ahead of you, paid for your coffee. It doesn't happen all the time, and you get this nice warm rush, and you think, oh, that's so nice, and then I won't say everybody's doing that all the time, but it's kind of a thing now. Not an everyday thing, but it's kind of a thing. It's become, still hypernormative. Um, and, donating an organ, um, you know, uh, to so that somebody else can live. There are people that, because some organs come in pairs and we can live with one, and that would be hyper normative behavior, to actually go ahead and offer up one of your bodily parts so that somebody else can survive, would be on the more top end of that. Um, Coming to the aid of a nation in distress. Yeah, maybe if we have a treaty, then it would be codified that we have to do that. We have a treaty to come to your distress if you have a problem, and you'll do that with us. There's exchange power in there, and the treaty exists. But just sending aid in the aftermath of a natural disaster in a country would be, in some regards, now I would say it's normative behavior, because the countries that are close to each other would want to do that to reinforce their bonds, their ties, reinforce their referent power with that other nation. Um, so yeah, that's norm-oriented power across the board, and this differentiation actually applies on the level of trend, because you've got trending is the in-group defining group that says, now it's Tide Pod Challenge. I keep coming back to that one because I was just so
It
astonished
was
by that.
baffling. It was.
And there's more. Oh, borax. There's the borax challenge. People are actually ingesting borax as a health promotion thing, and it's absolutely toxic. It's absolutely dangerous, and it's a cleaning product. If you don't, that's one of its functions. It's actually a naturally occurring, I think, mineral, borax, but it's in cleaning products, and people are like, "I'm doing the borax challenge," and all over social media. I think it's a more recent one, but so that's the trend. And then there can be the counter trend individuals. I'm not doing that. I'm not participating in that. Well, that's sort of uncool. Well, you're kind of a loser if you're not, with the trend. But we, on the other side, we have pro trending, which would be the really cool kids. And of course, they can do on Wednesdays, we wear pink for a while, but if everybody starts wearing pink, then it's no longer trendy. It's no longer setting them apart as cool. So they've got to come up with some new trend. Oh, well, nobody wears pink on Wednesdays anymore. Now it's, blue on Thursdays or something like that. Um, so you've got the trend that is quite possibly temporary. You've got those who are setting the trends, the pro trenders, and then you've got sort of the counter trends. They're ones that I'm not doing that ever, um, and that spills us into actually identity, as one of the forms that we've identified as well. So. Um, Identity oriented power as a subset of conformity oriented power is this next one I'm going to go to, but I want to let my colleagues catch up and probably flesh out what I've been going on about. Amir, where do you want to come in on this one?
Go ahead, Amir.
I think he's got his, there he is.
Adrian, it's your turn.
My turn. I feel like it's always my turn. That's one of the challenges of my conformity power is I'm trying to learn to be as quiet as these introverts here, because I tend to speak so much at all times.
And we introverts kind of rely on you. You should see us at networking events. Amir and I are like just struggling, and we just ride Adrian's coattails. He's when at these events, we just sort of follow him around, and we engage, but we're riding on your extroverting capabilities,
Hmm.
Adrian. Yeah, that personality and power. That's another one we're going to be talking about.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, but
well, let's do identity then, unless you
yeah.
had an example, Adrian.
No, I actually had
Okay.
an example
Yeah.
for identity.
Okay. Well, let's start with your example for identity-oriented power.
Yeah, essentially it's also based on social norms, and as all of these are.
Yeah.
And it's the obligation to conform to a certain identity, obviously.
Mhm.
Hence the
Yeah.
name. But I mean, it's one
What's an
thing about
identity? right?
Yeah, like one thing. I mean, we're the three of us were men, right? So at some point in our lives, I'm sure that we have been met with the thought and feeling of, well, a real man would do this, right? Based on just, male social norms and stuff like that, right? Like that's a
That's right.
common one that you hear.
Yeah.
Like a real man will,
Oh, it starts in childhood though. Big boys
right?
don't cry,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And if you want to be a big boy, then you hold back those tears real quick, right?
Yeah.
Or that's not very ladylike. Act like a lady,
Yes, that's another
right?
huge one, right?
And that comes. So that's building the identity,
Hmm.
and I've seen girls say, "I don't care about being a lady. I want to do what I want to do," right? So
Yep.
they push back on this identity-oriented um, power. But if they're like, "Oh my gosh, girls don't do that. I guess I better not do that anymore." Or boys are not allowed to express emotion. Well, I better hold back my emotions going forward, right?
Hmm.
But it goes right into adulthood,
Yeah.
right?
And, even just things of like, a good friend would be expected to do this, or like a good friend would do this, therefore I'm going to behave in this way,
Hmm.
right? So this idea of, what the ideal identity would do, it has power over us, right?
Absolutely.
And we find that with so many things, right? So many things. I remember being 13 years old at a Metallica concert, and an adult, I forget how I got in this conversation, but there was some adult there before the band started that was like talking about what a true Metallica fan is, right? Is that you
Hmm.
know every song on every album, and that you've been following them since Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. That's the first three and the best three, by the way. We can argue about that another time. But and like I just remember as that 13-year-old kid feeling that pressure to like identify and like prove my knowledge, like
Yeah.
I know that the first track on Kill 'Em All is Hit the Lights, and I know that, Four Horsemen, like, it's, and you feel a sense of obligation towards that identity that you're trying to, be in line with, or the identity that you're trying to reject, right? As a power, deflection or rejection.
Only a fascist would hold such a view.
Yeah.
Oh, gee, I don't want to be a fascist. I better change my view. Or, well, then call me a fascist. Because I believe that. And or no true liberal would ascribe to uh, that set of policy decisions or something like that. Uh, of course, any decent parent would want this for their child.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be seen as a bad parent, so I better put my kid in little league. Um, you know, oh, my kid doesn't want to go into little league. Well, that's interesting. Um, right. So no ethical person would do such a thing. So they're all indirect because I'm inferring what somebody that I believe you identify with as your identity would do to try to get you to snap back into conformity to that. And again, as we always say, just because you're attempting to shape reality and exercise power does not mean it'd be successful. And so that's big. Act your age, not your shoe size, is kind of a put down, but it's saying your behavior right now is not that of somebody who should be behaving according to their age, right? Grow up is a all of these phrases are indirect power attempts
Mhm.
that we apply,
Yeah.
or and it can go the other way. We can venerate somebody. Oh, there's such a model for women around the world. They really exude behaviors that are consistent with a feminist ideal, for instance. So whatever your identity is, that can be used to reinforce your behavior.
Mhm.
Um, what a good conservative, you voted this way for legislation. I don't know that people would say it quite that way, but um, yeah, it's very much conform to the expectations of this category that forms your identity. How's that?
Hmm.
That's a long-winded way of saying it, but
Yeah.
and we all have multiple facets to our identity.
Yeah.
I'm a parent, and I don't belong to any political party. I have my political leanings, but and we all share an identity around psychology and having been formally trained and practiced in the field. So those are all aspects of our unique identities, and then there's this press to conform, to fulfill others' expectations of somebody who falls into that identity category. And we have all kinds of identity markers that we use,
Yeah.
and that convey to other people our identity. The slogans on T-shirts, the uh, the paraphernalia we wear for teams. I'm a Boston fan, or I'm not, by the way, but I just came to top of mind there. Uh, um, and so we have these cues that we give off about who we are and how we want the world to relate to us, and who would see us instantly as in group versus not. All of us have traveled a bit, and I'll have a Canadian flag on a jacket I'm wearing or something like that, and I'm in an airport in Miami and waiting for a flight, and somebody walks up and says, "Hey, Canadian, eh?" There's my identity. I'm wearing this flag on my jacket, and they're either going to tell me they've been to Canada or they're from Canada. um, you know, and we will. There's inclusion power there, on the basis of identity, and uh, and then if I was rude to the person, then they would, who came up to me because they saw the Canadian flag, they would go, "Well, you're not real Canadian because Canadians are polite," and of course it's not true. But my point is that there's a stereotype that applies there.
Hmm.
Canadians uh, are hyper polite and always say sorry, and there's something to it, but there's lots of Canadians that violate those norms all the time. And even some people that push back against them and say, this is BS. We shouldn't be so polite. We shouldn't be saying sorry. We shouldn't be apologetic. And that's how norms shift around identity as well. So all of this is to say, there's a tremendous, and going back to my original point, we can apply these forms of power to ourselves on behalf of others,
Hmm.
because we don't want to be seen as breaking a norm or uncool by not following a trend or not being who we purport to be. Because and this brings in uh, other social psychological dynamics in some really big ways, because the whole idea of cognitive dissonance works in. I say I'm of this identity, and I say I live this, and yet I'm not. And people are pointing that out. Now, I could have cognitive dissonance within myself anyway, but if somebody points it out, we have a word for that. You're a hypocrite. You know, you want to belong to our racist party, and you're having relationships with people of another race. And by the way, race doesn't exist. It's not a thing, in biologically speaking, but we've crafted that as a social kind of construct. But and we frame the world in terms of this nonsense. But nonetheless, you're hanging out with people of a different skin color. So if you were truly with us who are against anybody with a different skin color, you either get back in line or we reject you, and you are going to be struggling with that identity as well. You see how there, none of these composite forms can exist apart from the other forms, right?
Yeah.
They're not, you know, they're all contingent upon inclusion, exclusion power, network power, which are, actually not even on the base form level, but the base forms form those as well. So I wish the model could be cleaner for folks, but actually, since we don't have a model at all, and this makes sense to the most of the people that we train. This is a leap and a bound way above where we started with soft power or hard power,
Hmm.
or power versus influence. Having some discussions about power versus influence. We just launched into there. We did decide not to use influence um, in the model to differentiate which forms of what we call now power are influence versus power. It was not productive. It was not helpful. So, and often influence is lumped in with soft power. So, but none of that is well articulated. And now we're trying to say, okay, you can use the word influence, but we don't have a classification for influence. And what we would say about that is that power is often thought of as brute force in the positive or negative vector. The power of an army, the power of love. But it's like overwhelming. And then influence is the soft center section where I'm not exercising power, but I'm trying to bring people around it. And as Amir said, that's the literature on influence in social psychology that isn't linked, well, is now linked to social power, but what isn't before. So uh, language matters here, and as we're trying to bring a new component to the table of language, as in this lens of social power, if we're successful, it's going to change culture, and we very much hope it will be. Maybe not even in our lifetimes. That's not so much important. That's why we're inviting those who are listening to us to engage with us in developing this model and this theory and generating insights and whatnot to it, so that we can have better discourse about the use and abuse of social power. So there you
Absolutely.
go. So we got one more form to go, but gentlemen, do you want to chime in on anything we've been saying?
Uh, I mean, I'm good to jump right into reputation, but Amir, how about you?
Just one point that in the on the relationship between identity and norm, uh, we follow only those norms that are a part of that the group that has that norm is a part of our identity. For example, if I don't really want to be connected to that kind of group, I don't care about what trend they are like following. I
Trends or
don't care
norms? Yeah,
about their norms. So
yeah.
when we say that norm has power, it doesn't mean that like whatever people around you do, you will follow that. If you don't care, if you really disidentify with that group, you may do actually the opposite. You
Hmm.
may try to make do something to tell everyone that I'm not a part of you, or I do not belong to your group. So that's how like norm-oriented power and identity-related power are interconnected. Actually, if that group is not a part of my identity, I'm not gonna follow their norm or trends. So,
Yeah, and like you said, you're gonna even reject them. You know, the goth group in the high school cafeteria is not going to wear pink on Wednesdays, right? They're deliberately going to wear black or to conform to their own in-group standards. Maybe their in-group standards every day we wear black. And if you don't, you're not goth. Um, you know, um,
The scene
and
kids wear pink, though.
oh, did they?
I don't know if
Nice.
you ever saw what the scene. It was a 2009 thing.
Oh yeah,
It was
nice.
basically goths that wear bright colors.
Right.
It was
Right.
a, it was a fun
Yeah.
cultural trend.
Yeah. And sometimes trends become normative. They try to get something that was started in one school. I don't know all the background about. Was it pink that wear pink on a particular day, but it's against anti-bullying.
Mm.
Somebody was bullied for wearing a pink shirt, and then it just sort of went viral out, and schools started to, deliberately wear pink as a pushback against bullying.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, and for a while, when Canada was involved with sending troops to Afghanistan, there was sort of a Fridays wear red on Fridays to acknowledge that our troops over there, and that came up as a bit, and it didn't become a norm. It kind of died out over time. Um, and but there was T-shirts around it and that kind of thing, and people make money off of trends. By the way, I'm not denigrating that one at all, obviously, but I don't know if Tide got more purchases during the Tide Pod Challenge or not, but they wouldn't want it, I'm sure. They wouldn't want their brand associated with harm. Um, I'm sure of that, but they actually took active measures to discourage it. I remember them saying, do not do this. There's real danger to eating Tide Pods. Um, and some of the trends are harmless. Wasn't there with the ice water challenge? Dump a bucket of ice
Yeah,
water
like
over your
the
head for charity.
yeah for
Um,
ALS, right? For
yeah,
yeah, the ALS
yeah,
bucket challenge, which kind of
yeah,
came back for a bit in the
yeah,
last year. Yeah.
yeah. And then there's the polar bear dip up here. There's a few stalwart people on New Year's Day who break a hole in the ice, and it's a party and a celebration, and people jump in the frigid waters and then jump out. And they'll often do it for charity. Movember is still going. That you know may have been a trend that or may it's becoming normative where men grow a mustache for in support of cancer, and then they shave it off. So all of these things can have pro-social sides and even physically dangerous sidelines to them as well. Borax and Tide Pods and whatnot. Um, Extreme fasting in some circles. So
Mhm.
yeah, if you don't identify with the group, you're not going to be inclined to abide by the norms. That's Amir's point, and it's a very very important one. Um,
Absolutely.
and these are identity markers, right? I comply with my in group.
So
Um,
I just discovered something on a side note.
uh-huh.
Our recording software has a 100-minute limit, and it's flashing. It's giving me a signal right now. We're at 96
Oh
minutes and
no.
40 seconds.
All right.
If we want to quickly get to reputation power, and
I don't want to rush through a form.
no,
Um,
no, God, but let
yeah.
me introduce it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, we'll introduce it and then maybe wrap this up, and then we'll pick this up next week.
mhm.
Um, and
Mhm.
so and we didn't get to consciousness, so that'll as in power and layers of conscious awareness. We'll bring that forward. I'm excited to talk about that as well. Are there any things that we need to say to everybody about you know? What we've been talking about today, or anything
Yeah,
upcoming.
I think we should
We're going to move
actually.
over to Apple as well. We're going to be on Apple shortly.
Yeah,
For
and I
anybody who's
think
listening to us on another platform and want to pick it up there, we're going there this week. Um, that's a point.
yeah, and I think we should actually wrap it up there rather than getting into reputation power as I'm
Yeah.
watching this clock move down.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, we will be available on Apple. Continue, listening to us on Spotify and YouTube. Please feel free to comment, ask us questions. Right, we would love to
Yeah.
with you
Send up.
guys.
Connect with us on LinkedIn. Follow. I mean, connect. Full connect. Don't just follow us. I mean, follow is great, but we'll accept your. We want to get to know folks, and the book is coming. We're making progress on. It's all about power. We expect it to be out in 2026 for sure, and we're on the cusp of 2026. So it probably won't come in January. I know that, but it's coming, and we should wrap this up.
Yep. So yeah, we're Vokes Leadership Group, and this is the Social Power Lab, episode 4, and we will see you in episode 5 as we dive deeper into reputation-oriented power and much more to come. So thank you for listening.
Roger that.
Take care, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Social Power Lab podcast. Make sure you join us next week as we continue to uncover the hidden dynamics of social power all around us, because every conversation changes the world one interaction at a time. You can listen to the Social Power Lab podcast on Spotify under Social Power Lab, on YouTube under Social Power Lab _VLG, and on LinkedIn under Vokes Leadership Group. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. This podcast was produced by Trenton Vokes. The theme was produced and written by Adrian Deschamps.